All right, so today we're diving into a recipe that sounds both comforting and kind of intriguing. Chicken Saltimbocca. We found a podcast episode all about it, and well, our mission today is to equip you with the knowledge and skills to confidently recreate this dish in your own kitchen.
That sounds great.
We're not just going to walk through the steps, we're going to uncover the why behind each of them
Oh, nice.
so you can become a more intuitive cook. And get this, Saltimbocca. It literally means jumps in the mouth in Italian.
Wow.
Talk about setting high expectations. I am so ready to dig in. How about you?
I'm excited. It's a really interesting dish, especially when you think about the history behind it. Saltimbocca is an Italian-American adaptation of a traditional Italian recipe. It's a great example of how food evolves as it travels across cultures,
Yeah,
like blending traditions and ingredients.
that makes a lot of sense. And speaking of ingredients, the podcast episode emphasized how easy this dish is to make. When I saw the ingredient list, I was pleasantly surprised. We're talking boneless, skinless chicken breasts, prosciutto, fresh sage, olive oil, flour, chicken broth, and some butter. Like, pretty standard stuff, right?
Totally. You probably already have most of that in your kitchen.
Yeah.
That's what makes this dish so approachable for beginner cooks.
Yeah. So you've got simple ingredients, but the name jumps in the mouth suggests some serious flavor. Let's break down the steps and see how these flavors come together. So first step is prepping the chicken. The recipe says to pound the chicken breasts to about a 1/4 inch thickness. Is there a specific reason for this?
Yeah, pounding the chicken makes sure that it cooks evenly, which helps prevent it from drying out. It's a really simple step, but it makes a huge difference in the final texture of the dish.
Yeah. Nobody wants a dry, tough chicken breast.
Definitely not.
All right, so we've got our perfectly pounded chicken breasts. Next, we layer on the prosciutto and fresh sage. That combination already sounds amazing to me, but what's the reasoning behind pairing those two specifically?
Well, the prosciutto and sage, they're like a match made in culinary heaven. Prosciutto brings that salty, savory depth, almost like a concentrated burst of umami, while the fresh sage adds an earthy, almost peppery aroma that cuts through the richness of the meat. It's a classic combination for a reason. And then you secure everything with a toothpick.
Interesting technique. Is there a reason for using a toothpick?
It's a clever way to keep everything together during cooking. So the prosciutto and sage don't slide around. It just makes the cooking process so much smoother. And it makes for a beautiful presentation.
So it's both functional and aesthetically pleasing. Okay, so we've got our flavorful little bundles secured. What comes next?
Next, we dredge the chicken in flour.
Ah, dredging. Is this where things start to get a little chefy?
It's not at all. Dredging in flour has two important purposes. First, it creates a lovely crispy crust on the chicken as it cooks. And second, it helps thicken the sauce later on.
Oh.
It's simple, but it has a big impact on both the texture and the flavor.
Okay, I love a good multitasker in the kitchen. So we've dredged our chicken. Now it's time for the actual cooking. The recipe says to sear the chicken in olive oil. Prosciutto side down first. Then it mentions something about deglazing the pan. You mentioned this was approachable for beginners, but deglazing can be intimidating for some. Any tips for those new to the technique?
Yeah, deglazing might sound fancy, but it's really just about using liquid to release those flavorful brown bits stuck to your pan after searing the chicken. Like those bits are packed with umami, that savory depth that just makes a dish sing. The key is to use a good quality wooden spoon to scrape up all those delicious bits as the liquid simmers. It's super simple, but it really transforms the flavor of your sauce.
Wow, I never thought about the cultural journey of a dish like this. It makes me appreciate the recipe in a whole new way.
It really adds another dimension to the experience, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So we've deglazed the pan, created a flavor-packed base for our sauce. What happens next?
We let the sauce simmer for a bit, which allows it to reduce and concentrate those flavors. Then we stir in a little butter for a silky, luxurious finish. And finally, we bring the chicken back to the party, letting it simmer in that glorious sauce until cooked through.
This is where everything comes together, right?
Exactly. It's crucial not just for cooking the chicken through, but for allowing all those beautiful flavors to meld and the sauce to reach that perfect consistency. It's all about building layers of flavor and texture.
Okay, I'm officially starting to understand why this dish is called jumps in the mouth. But we're not done yet, are we? There's more to this recipe than just the chicken.
Right. The final touches really elevate this dish.
Yeah.
The podcast episode suggests transferring the chicken to a serving platter, drizzling that gorgeous sauce over it, and then garnishing with some chopped parsley and a squeeze of lemon juice.
Okay, now I'm getting hungry. It sounds like we've covered the how, but what about the why? Why should our listener drop everything and make this dish tonight?
Well, besides the fact that it's apparently delicious enough to jump in your mouth,
Yeah.
this recipe is a prime example of using simple, accessible ingredients and turning them into something truly special through technique and understanding. It's approachable for cooks of all levels, but still feels impressive enough for a dinner party.
You make a great point about the transformation. We started with basic ingredients, but through pounding, layering flavors, deglazing, we've built something complex and delicious. It's like culinary alchemy.
Exactly. And I think that's a key takeaway for our listener. You don't need a million fancy ingredients or complicated techniques to create a really memorable dish. It's about understanding the fundamentals and how to apply them.
Absolutely. Speaking of fundamentals, one thing that really stood out to me was the emphasis on using fresh sage.
Ah, yes. Fresh herbs can make all the difference in a dish like this. Dried sage simply wouldn't provide the same bright, earthy aroma that really makes the flavor sing.
My grandmother always used to say that fresh herbs are the perfume of the kitchen. She had the most amazing herb garden, and the scent of fresh sage always reminds me of her cooking. It's amazing how a simple ingredient can evoke such powerful memories and emotions.
That's so true. Food has this incredible ability to connect us to our past, to our loved ones, to different cultures. It's more than just sustenance. It's a story, an experience.
I love that perspective. So we've talked about the steps, the techniques, the history, even the emotional connection food can create. What stands out to you from this deep dive? What are some of the key takeaways for our listener as they embark on their own Saltimbocca journey?
I think one of the biggest takeaways is the importance of understanding the why behind the how. We didn't just list the ingredients and steps. We explored the reasoning behind each technique. From pounding the chicken to deglazing the pan, this kind of knowledge empowers you to become a more confident and intuitive cook, able to adapt and experiment in the kitchen.
I completely agree. It's like learning a new language. Once you understand the grammar and vocabulary, you can start to create your own sentences, your own stories, and in this case, your own delicious dishes.
Precisely. And speaking of creating your own dishes, one aspect we haven't touched on yet is the importance of choosing the right side dish.
That's a great point. You wouldn't want to overwhelm the delicate flavors of the Saltimbocca with a heavy or overly complicated side.
Right.
What are some of your thoughts on complementary pairings?
Well, you could go in a lot of different directions. Something light and fresh, like a simple salad with a bright vinaigrette, would provide a lovely contrast to the richness of the dish.
Ooh, a lemon-dressed arugula salad would be delicious. That peppery bite of the arugula would cut through the richness of the prosciutto and sage beautifully.
Exactly. Or you could opt for something a bit more comforting, like creamy polenta or roasted vegetables.
Oh, roasted root vegetables with a touch of rosemary would be fantastic. The earthy flavors would complement the sage in the Saltimbocca perfectly.
You see, that's what I love about cooking. It's an invitation to get creative and personalize a dish to your liking. There's no one right answer when it comes to pairings. It's all about exploring different flavors and textures and finding what works best for you.
I think our listener is going to have so much fun experimenting with this recipe. They've got the knowledge, the understanding, and now the inspiration to make this dish truly their own.
Yeah, I think they're going to love it.
Yeah.
So to recap, we've gone from a simple list of ingredients to, you know, a deep understanding of how those ingredients work together to create a dish that's not only bursting with flavor, but also rich in history.
Yeah, and we've explored the cultural journey of Saltimbocca,
Yep.
demystified some techniques like deglazing,
Hmm.
and even touched on the emotional power of food.
Yeah. And most importantly, we've empowered our listeners with the knowledge and confidence to make this dish their own.
I think that's the best part of this whole deep dive. It's not just about following a recipe, it's about understanding the principles behind it and using that knowledge to create something special. Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
what are you waiting for? Go forth and conquer Chicken Saltimbocca. And don't forget to share your culinary masterpieces with us on social media using hashtag #DeepDiveDishes. We can't wait to see what you create.
Happy cooking. And let's hope it really does jump in the mouth.